The alien emperor stood before the entire Galactic Council and laughed. To him, humans were nothing more than fragile creatures hiding on a tiny blue planet. He called them weak. He called them primitive. And finally, he declared to the entire galaxy, humans are cowards. The council applauded, because every alien empire believed the same thing. But what none of them knew was that humans were never cowards. They were simply waiting for the right moment to rise. And when that moment came, the entire galaxy would regret mocking humanity. The Galactic Council Hall was larger than most cities. Thousands of alien leaders filled the massive chamber, their glowing eyes fixed on the golden throne floating above the center of the hall. On that throne sat Emperor Karzeth, ruler of the Zarvok Empire, the most feared empire in the galaxy. His fleets had conquered hundreds of star systems. Entire civilizations had fallen at the sound of his name. And today he had called the council together for one reason only, to speak about humans. The Emperor stood slowly, his armored wings spreading behind him as the room fell silent. A giant hologram of Earth appeared above the council floor, a small blue planet surrounded by weak satellites and primitive ships. Karzeth looked at it with open disgust. "This," he said, his voice echoing across the chamber, "is the species that believes it belongs among the stars." Some alien leaders began to laugh. Others watched with curiosity. Humans were new to the galactic stage. They had only recently begun exploring space beyond their solar system. Their ships were small. Their technology looked simple compared to the powerful empires of the galaxy. Yet humans kept expanding, building stations, exploring new regions, and refusing to submit to any empire. The Emperor continued speaking, his tone filled with mockery. For years, these humans have hidden behind diplomacy and weak defenses. They talk about peace, cooperation, and unity. The laughter grew louder. But peace, the Emperor growled, is the language of the weak. The hologram zoomed closer to Earth, showing its cities glowing in the darkness of space. Humans pretend they are brave explorers, he continued, but they are nothing more than cowards hiding on a fragile world. The chamber erupted with applause and cruel amusement. Many alien leaders had already formed opinions about humanity. To them, humans looked emotional, fragile, and divided. Their governments argued with each other. Their armies were small compared to galactic forces. They seemed completely unprepared for real interstellar war. The Emperor raised his hand, silencing the crowd. If humans were truly brave, he declared, they would challenge the galaxy's greatest empire. His glowing eyes narrowed. But they will not, because humans are cowards. The declaration spread instantly across the galactic network. News stations repeated the Emperor's words. Alien citizens laughed as they watched recordings of the speech. Across thousands of worlds, the same opinion formed. Humanity was weak. But on Earth, the reaction was very different. In hidden command centers beneath mountains and oceans, human leaders watched the speech in silence. No one shouted. No one panicked. Instead, they calmly turned off the broadcast. A quiet voice spoke inside the command room. Phase 1 is complete. Around the world, enormous projects were already underway. Massive shipyards hidden beyond the orbit of Neptune were constructing fleets that alien sensors could not detect. Underground laboratories were developing weapons far more advanced than anything humans had shown the galaxy. Artificial intelligence systems were studying alien battle tactics collected over decades. Humanity had never tried to prove its strength to the galaxy. It had never tried to impress alien empires with power. Instead, humans had chosen patience. While the galaxy mocked them, humanity observed, learned, and prepared. The Emperor believed humans were cowards because they did not rush into war. But humans understood something that many alien empires had forgotten. The strongest warrior is not the one who fights first. The strongest warrior is the one who waits until victory is certain. And across Earth, millions of people continued their normal lives, unaware that their species was quietly preparing for the greatest turning point in galactic history. Because far above their world, hidden in the darkness of space, the first true human battle fleet had already begun to assemble. And when the time finally came, the galaxy would discover that humanity's silence had never been fear. It had been preparation. One admiral cautiously asked, "Do you wish to destroy the planet, my emperor?" Karzeth shook his head slowly. "No," he said. Destruction would make them martyrs. I want humiliation. His eyes glowed with cruel satisfaction. Surround their world. Force them to surrender publicly. Broadcast it to every star system. The admirals immediately began preparing the mission. Thousands of warships gathered from different parts of the Empire. Battleships the size of mountains. Carriers capable of deploying entire fighter armies. The fleet grew until it became one of the largest military forces ever assembled. When it finally launched toward the solar system, alien news networks followed every movement. Citizens across the galaxy watched the approaching armada with excitement. They expected to see humanity collapse in fear. They expected to see Earth surrender before the fleet even arrived. But when the Zarvok fleet entered the outer edge of the solar system, something strange happened. Human space traffic continued normally. Cargo ships traveled between planets. Mining stations operated around asteroids. No emergency signals were sent. No evacuation attempts were detected. The alien commanders found the situation confusing. Why are they not afraid? One officer asked. Another officer suggested that humans were simply too primitive to understand the danger. Emperor Karzeth himself watched the reports with amusement. They will understand soon, he said calmly. As the fleet moved closer to Earth, the commanders sent the official message to the planet. The transmission was clear and direct. This is the Imperial fleet of the Zarvok Empire. Earth is now surrounded. Surrender immediately and accept Imperial rule. The message repeated across every human communication channel. Then the fleet waited. Minutes passed. Then hours. Human satellites received the message. Human stations acknowledged the signal, but no reply came. The silence returned once again. On the Emperor's flagship, confusion began spreading through the command bridge. Why are they not responding? One officer asked. Emperor Karzeth leaned forward slowly as he stared at the silent blue planet. For a brief moment, something unusual appeared in his thoughts. A small feeling of uncertainty. Because silence can mean many things. Sometimes it means fear, but sometimes it means something far more dangerous. And deep within the solar system, hidden beyond the sight of the Imperial fleet, the largest human armada ever created was finally preparing to move. On the Emperor's flagship, confusion began spreading through the command bridge. Why are they not responding? One officer asked. Emperor Karzeth leaned forward slowly as he stared at the silent blue planet. For a brief moment, something unusual appeared in his thoughts. A small feeling of uncertainty. Because silence can mean many things. Sometimes it means fear, but sometimes it means something far more dangerous. And deep within the solar system, hidden beyond the sight of the Imperial fleet, the largest human armada ever created was finally preparing to move. The silence from Earth continued, and the commanders of the Zarvok fleet began to grow impatient. Thousands of warships floated above the solar system like a dark storm, their weapons ready, their shields glowing faintly against the cold light of distant stars. Never in the history of the Empire had any species ignored a surrender order. Usually planets responded within minutes, sometimes seconds. Fear forced them to obey. But Earth was different. Hours passed with no answer. On the Emperor's flagship, the command bridge was filled with tension. Officers studied their sensors again and again, searching for signs of panic or military movement from the humans. Yet everything looked strangely normal. Civilian ships continued their routes between planets. Small stations kept sending routine signals. Mining drones worked around asteroids as if nothing unusual was happening. One officer finally spoke. My Emperor, it is possible the humans are attempting to appear calm to hide their fear. Emperor Karzeth leaned back on his throne, his long claws tapping slowly against the metal armrest. Then we will remove their illusion. He raised his hand and gave a new order. Move the fleet closer to Earth. Let them see our power. The massive armada advanced deeper into the solar system. Battleships formed long rows like metal mountains floating through space. Carrier ships opened their launch bays, releasing waves of fighters that spread across the sky like dark birds. The message was clear. The Empire had come to dominate. On Earth, billions of people could now see the alien fleet through telescopes and satellite broadcasts. The sky above their planet was filled with unfamiliar warships. News channels reported the arrival. Governments released calm statements asking citizens to remain peaceful. To the alien observers, the reaction seemed incredibly weak. No missiles were launched. No fleets rushed to defend the planet. Instead, Earth remained quiet again. On the Imperial flagship, laughter spread across the command deck. "They are terrified," one commander said. "They do not even know how to fight." Emperor Karzeth smiled slowly. "Exactly as I expected." He ordered another message to be sent to Earth. This one carried his personal voice. The transmission echoed across every human communication system. "People of Earth," the Emperor announced proudly, "your world is surrounded by the might of the Zarvok Empire. Your defenses are useless. Your ships are primitive. Your leaders are powerless." He paused, letting his words sink into the silence. "Surrender now, and your species will be allowed to survive as servants of the Empire." The message ended. Again the fleet waited. Minutes turned into another hour. And once again, nothing happened. No surrender signal arrived. No desperate negotiation message appeared. Only silence filled the communication channels. This time the silence felt different. Some of the alien officers began to feel uncomfortable. One commander whispered to another, "Why are they still not responding?" Suddenly, a sensor operator shouted from across the bridge. "Energy signatures detected." Every head turned toward the main display. At first the readings were small, weak signals appearing from far beyond the orbit of Neptune. Then more signals appeared, and more. The sensor screen began filling with hundreds of unknown contacts. The officers quickly analyzed them. Their confusion turned into shock. "My Emperor," the operator said slowly, "those are not stations, they are ships." Karzeth's eyes narrowed. "How many?" The operator hesitated. "Thousands." The bridge fell completely silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the sensor alarms grew louder as even more signals appeared across the system. Hidden behind moons, emerging from asteroid belts, rising from the darkness beyond planetary orbits, massive human warships were appearing everywhere. Ships larger than anything humans had ever shown before. Heavy cruisers with layered armor, giant carriers surrounded by defensive drones, battleships carrying weapons that produced energy readings unknown to alien science. The Imperial officers stared at the growing fleet in disbelief. This is impossible," one whispered. Emperor Karzeth stood slowly from his throne as the realization began to spread across the command bridge. Humanity had not been silent because they were afraid. Humanity had been silent because they had been waiting. And now the trap was closing. The command bridge of the Imperial flagship was no longer calm. Only minutes earlier, the officers of the Zarvok Empire had been laughing at humanity. Now every screen on the bridge was filled with red warning signals. Human ships were appearing across the entire solar system. They were emerging from hidden positions behind moons, asteroids, and deep space stations that had remained invisible to Imperial sensors. At first, the alien commanders believed it was a mistake. Maybe their sensors were damaged. Maybe the readings were false signals. But the numbers kept increasing. Hundreds of ships became thousands. Then thousands became tens of thousands. The silence inside the command bridge became heavy and uncomfortable. One officer finally spoke in a quiet voice. "My Emperor, this fleet is far larger than expected." Emperor Karzeth stared at the tactical display without speaking. The holographic map of the solar system now showed human fleets forming organized battle lines. Their ships moved with perfect coordination, positioning themselves between the Imperial Armada and the inner planets. Another officer quickly analyzed the data. Their ships are using advanced drive systems, faster than any technology humans previously possessed. A second officer added nervously, "Their energy signatures suggest weapon systems we have never encountered." The Emperor slowly clenched his claws. For years he had believed humanity was weak. He had believed their silence meant fear. But the evidence on the screen was showing something very different. Humans had been building this fleet in secret for years. Hidden shipyards, hidden research facilities, hidden military programs. The Empire had completely underestimated them. Suddenly, a new signal appeared on the communication console. A direct transmission request. The bridge officer looked surprised. "My Emperor, the humans are contacting us." Karzeth's eyes glowed with anger. "Put it on the main screen." The massive display changed. Instead of star maps and fleet formations, the image of a human appeared. The man wore a dark military uniform. Behind him was the bridge of a massive warship filled with advanced technology. Human officers moved calmly around their stations. No one looked afraid. The human commander spoke with a steady voice. This is Admiral David Carter of the United Earth Fleet. The alien officers listened carefully. The calm confidence in the human's voice felt strange. Carter continued speaking. Emperor Karzeth, 1 year ago you stood before the Galactic Council and declared that humans are cowards. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, but he remained silent. You said humans hide behind diplomacy, Carter continued. You said we are too weak to fight. The human admiral paused for a moment. Then he looked directly at the Emperor through the screen. You were wrong. Across the bridge of the Imperial flagship, several officers shifted nervously. The human commander continued calmly. Humans are not cowards. Humans are patient. As he spoke, the tactical display continued updating behind the Emperor's throne. More human ships were arriving every second. Entire fleets moving into strategic positions. Carter's voice remained calm and controlled. For decades, humanity has studied every empire in the galaxy. We observed your weapons, your tactics, your weaknesses. The alien officers looked at each other in growing concern. While the galaxy laughed at us, Carter said, we were preparing. He gestured slightly behind him. The camera angle widened, revealing the enormous bridge of the human flagship. Advanced holographic displays surrounded the crew. The technology looked far beyond anything the Empire had expected from humans. You believed our silence meant fear, Carter said quietly. In reality, it meant we were not ready yet. The Emperor finally spoke, his voice deep with anger. You think this fleet will save you? Carter's expression did not change. No, he replied calmly. This fleet will end the myth that humanity is weak. At that moment, the human fleets across the solar system completed their formation. The Imperial Armada was no longer surrounding Earth. Instead, it had become the one surrounded. For the first time in centuries, the mighty Zarvok Empire found itself facing an enemy it did not understand. And across the galaxy, millions of alien observers were watching the same broadcast in shock. The species they had laughed at had just revealed one of the most powerful fleets ever assembled. Humanity had finally spoken, and the galaxy was beginning to understand a terrifying truth. The humans had never been afraid. They had simply been waiting for the perfect moment to rise. The moment Admiral Carter's message ended, silence returned to the Imperial Command Bridge. But this silence was no longer filled with confidence. It was filled with uncertainty. The tactical screens surrounding Emperor Karzeth continued updating rapidly as human fleets finished surrounding the Zarvok Armada. Thousands of ships were now positioned across the solar system in precise formations. Heavy battleships guarded the inner planets. Long lines of cruisers blocked every possible escape route. Smaller defense craft moved between the larger vessels like a living shield. Every movement looked calculated. Every position looked planned long before this moment. One Imperial officer finally broke the silence. My Emperor, the humans have completely surrounded us. The words felt unreal even as he spoke them. The Zarvok Empire had surrounded countless planets during its long history, but it had never been the one trapped. Emperor Karzeth stared at the display, studying the enemy fleet carefully. The ships looked different from typical alien warships. Their armor layers were thick and angular. Their engines produced unusual energy patterns. Even their formations were strange. Human fleets were not arranged in simple attack lines. They were arranged in complex defensive grids designed to protect each other while maximizing firepower. The Emperor slowly began to understand something disturbing. Humans had not built their military to look powerful. They had built it to win. On another screen, the communication channel from the human flagship reopened. Admiral Carter appeared again, still calm, still completely confident. Emperor Karzeth, he said, your fleet entered our system expecting surrender. Behind Carter, the human officers continued working without panic. They looked focused, disciplined, and prepared. Instead, Carter continued, you have entered a controlled defense zone. One of the Imperial commanders whispered quietly, defense zone. Carter explained calmly, as if speaking to a student. Every human fleet you see here was placed in position weeks before your arrival. We predicted your movements the moment your ships left Imperial space. Several alien officers looked shocked. Predicting an entire invasion fleet required extraordinary intelligence gathering. Carter continued, for years humanity has studied the Zarvok Empire. Your fleet formations, your communication patterns, your battle strategies. The human admiral leaned slightly forward. You believe your empire is feared because it is powerful, but power alone does not win wars. Emperor Karzeth growled angrily. Enough human arrogance. Carter shook his head slightly. This is not arrogance. This is history repeating itself. The alien officers watched the human closely. Carter continued, speaking in a calm voice that carried surprising authority. Throughout our history, humans have faced enemies stronger than themselves. Larger armies, better weapons, more advanced technology. He paused for a moment before finishing the sentence. And every time, humanity adapted. The tactical display behind the Emperor suddenly changed again. Several human fleets began moving slowly forward, tightening the circle around the Imperial Armada. The movement was not aggressive. It was controlled, almost patient. Carter spoke again. You once told the galaxy that humans are cowards because we value diplomacy. The human admiral's voice became slightly firmer. You misunderstood our intentions. He gestured toward the enormous fleet visible through the bridge windows behind him. Diplomacy is the first choice of a species that understands war. The Imperial officers felt the meaning behind those words. Humans preferred peace because they understood how dangerous they could become if war truly began. Carter's final words echoed across the command bridge. We did not build this fleet to conquer the galaxy. He paused for one final moment. We built it to ensure that no empire would ever threaten humanity again. On the Imperial flagship, the officers realized something they had never imagined before. Humanity was not trying to prove it was powerful. Humanity was proving it could not be controlled. For the first time since the Empire began its long expansion across the stars, Emperor Karzeth felt something unfamiliar rising inside his mind. Doubt. Because the humans he had called cowards were now standing calmly against the most feared empire in the galaxy. And they did not look afraid at all. The tension inside the Imperial flagship grew heavier with every passing minute. The Zarvok officers stood around their consoles, watching the tactical displays as human fleets slowly moved into tighter formations. Thousands of ships surrounded them in perfect coordination. It was not chaos. It was strategy. Every human vessel held a precise position, creating layers of defense and attack lines that overlapped with each other. To the experienced alien commanders, the design was deeply unsettling. This was not the behavior of a young, inexperienced species. This was the behavior of a civilization that had studied war very carefully. Emperor Karzeth stood silently in front of the massive star map, his glowing eyes moving across the countless human ships now surrounding his fleet. Only a few hours ago he had expected a simple victory. Earth would surrender, humanity would bow, and the galaxy would see another example of the Empire's unstoppable power. But reality had changed very quickly. Now his fleet was the one trapped inside the solar system. One of the Imperial admirals stepped forward carefully. My Emperor, our fleet still holds superior firepower in several sectors. If we strike first, we may be able to break through their lines. Another officer quickly disagreed. Their formations are designed to absorb frontal attacks. If we move aggressively, we may trigger a full counterattack. The commanders began arguing quietly while studying the data. The more they analyzed the human fleet, the more impressive it appeared. Their shield networks were stronger than expected. Their weapon systems showed energy levels comparable to advanced Imperial cannons. Even their smaller support ships were equipped with unusual defensive drones that constantly moved around the larger vessels. Everything suggested that the humans had prepared for this exact situation. On the main screen, Admiral Carter was still watching the Imperial bridge through the open communication channel. His expression remained calm. You were trying to decide whether to fight or retreat, he said. The alien officers stopped arguing when they heard him speak. Carter continued quietly. But there is something you should understand first. Behind him, the massive windows of the human flagship showed the endless lines of warships stretching across space. Humans did not build this fleet overnight, he explained. It took decades of research, cooperation, and preparation. The human admiral walked slowly across the bridge while speaking. For most species in the galaxy, war fleets are built to show power. They are symbols meant to scare enemies. He stopped and looked directly at the Emperor through the screen. Human fleets are different. Carter's voice remained steady but carried clear confidence. Human fleets are built to survive. The Imperial officers watched silently as new information appeared on their tactical displays. Human ships were constantly sharing power and data across the network. If one vessel was damaged, nearby ships could immediately reinforce its shields. If one weapon system was destroyed, other ships could compensate for the lost firepower. It was a flexible battlefield system unlike anything the Empire had seen before. The Emperor finally spoke again, his voice darker than before. "You think this changes anything, human?" Carter answered without hesitation. "Yes." The single word echoed across the command bridge. "Because today the galaxy learned something important." Carter gestured toward the surrounding fleets. "You believed humans were weak because we avoided war." His voice became slightly stronger. "But avoiding war is not weakness. It is wisdom." Several alien officers lowered their heads as the meaning of those words sank in. Carter continued speaking slowly, so every listener across the galaxy could understand. "Human history is full of conflict. We have seen the cost of endless war on our own planet." He paused for a moment before finishing the thought. "That is why humanity values peace." The Emperor's claws tightened on the armrest of his throne. Carter's final statement came calmly but firmly. "But when someone threatens our survival, humanity does not run." As if responding to his words, the human fleets across the solar system activated their shield networks at the same time. Thousands of glowing energy fields appeared in the darkness of space. The message was clear. Humanity was ready for whatever came next, and the galaxy watching from afar was finally beginning to understand something the Emperor had ignored. The species he had called cowards was standing calmly against one of the greatest empires ever created, and they looked completely prepared for war. The solar system had become completely silent again, but this silence was very different from before. Thousands of human ships held their positions like an unbreakable wall across space. Their shields glowed faintly in the darkness, forming a massive defensive network around Earth and the inner planets. The Zarvok Imperial fleet remained trapped inside the formation. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was not the hunter. It was the one being watched. On the Imperial flagship, Emperor Karzeth stared at the tactical display in front of him. The red markers showing human ships surrounded the blue icons of his own fleet from every direction. Escape routes were nearly impossible. Every path out of the system was guarded by multiple layers of human warships. His officers waited for an order, but the Emperor remained silent for a long moment. This situation was something he had never experienced before. The Zarvok Empire had conquered hundreds of civilizations. Their strategy was always the same: arrive with overwhelming force, demand surrender, destroy any resistance quickly. It had worked every time. But humanity had not followed the expected pattern. They had not panicked. They had not begged for mercy. They had not rushed blindly into battle either. Instead, they had prepared quietly for years and revealed their strength only when the moment was perfect. Admiral Carter's face still appeared on the main communication screen. His calm expression never changed as he watched the Emperor carefully. The human commander finally spoke again. "You are realizing the truth now." His voice carried no anger, only certainty. "Humans were never afraid of your empire." The Emperor's glowing eyes narrowed. "Then why hide your power for so long?" Carter answered without hesitation. "Because power shown too early invites unnecessary war." The human admiral walked slowly across the bridge of his flagship while continuing to speak. "Humanity entered the galactic community knowing we were young compared to older civilizations. Many species had thousands of years of spacefaring experience before we even left our planet." He gestured toward the massive fleets surrounding the system. "If we had tried to compete with every empire openly, we would have been destroyed." The alien officers listened carefully. Carter's explanation was simple but powerful. "So humanity chose a different path," he continued. "We learned quietly. We studied every species we encountered. We improved our technology step by step." Carter stopped walking and looked directly at the Emperor again. "And while others laughed at us, we prepared for the day someone would finally test us." The words echoed across the bridge. The Emperor slowly began to understand the full meaning of humanity's strategy. Humans had allowed the galaxy to underestimate them. They had allowed empires to believe they were weak. Because an underestimated enemy is the most dangerous kind. One of the Imperial admirals spoke nervously. "My Emperor, their fleets continue tightening their formation. If we do not act soon, we may lose our chance to escape." The Emperor remained silent, his mind racing through possibilities. A direct attack would trigger a massive war inside the solar system. Even if the Empire managed to break through, the cost could destroy half the fleet. Retreat might still be possible, but it would damage the Empire's reputation across the galaxy. Meanwhile, millions of alien citizens across distant worlds were watching the confrontation through live broadcasts. What they saw shocked them. The humans were not acting like frightened beginners. Their fleets moved with perfect discipline. Their commanders spoke calmly, even while facing the most powerful empire in known space. Many alien leaders began to question their earlier assumptions. Maybe humanity had never been weak at all. Maybe they had simply been patient. Admiral Carter finally delivered his final message to the Emperor. 1 year ago, you stood before the Galactic Council and called humans cowards. His voice remained steady and clear. Today, the galaxy has seen the truth. Behind him, the enormous human fleets held their position without firing a single shot. Carter finished with a calm but powerful statement. Humans do not seek war with the galaxy. He paused briefly before adding the final words. But no empire will ever threaten our species again. Across the solar system, the human fleets remained ready, their weapons powered, their shields shining in the dark. Humanity had risen without anger, without panic, and without fear. And the entire galaxy had just learned the most important lesson about the human race. Patience should never be mistaken for weakness. Because when humans finally rise, even empires must stop and think twice. Across the galaxy, billions of eyes were now watching the same scene. News stations from hundreds of civilizations had connected their broadcasts to the solar system. The confrontation between the mighty Zarvok Empire and the young human civilization had become the most important event in galactic history. Many alien leaders sat in silence as they watched the massive human fleets holding their positions. Only a few hours earlier, most of them had believed the same thing the Emperor believed. Humans were weak. Humans were inexperienced. Humans were cowards hiding behind diplomacy. But the scene in front of them told a very different story. Thousands of human warships formed an enormous defensive network around Earth and the inner planets. Their formations were organized with incredible precision. Their shield systems were linked together in ways most alien engineers had never imagined. Even the smallest human ships were placed exactly where they were needed. It looked less like a fleet and more like a living system designed to protect itself and strike if necessary. On the Imperial flagship, Emperor Karzeth stood completely still while studying the tactical display. His admirals waited nervously for a command. The Emperor knew every decision he made now would shape the future of his empire. If he ordered an attack, a massive battle would begin immediately. The solar system would become the center of the largest war the galaxy had ever seen. But if he ordered a retreat, the reputation of the Zarvok Empire would suffer greatly. For centuries, the Empire had been feared by every civilization in the galaxy. Fear was the foundation of their power. Losing that fear could weaken their control over many conquered systems. Yet the Emperor was not a foolish leader. He understood strategy. And the more he studied the human fleets, the clearer the situation became. Humanity had prepared for this encounter long before his fleet ever entered the solar system. Their positions were perfect. Their defenses were layered. Their ships were equipped with technology that matched Imperial weapons. This was not an accidental defense. This was a carefully built trap. Admiral Carter's voice returned through the communication channel once again. Emperor Karzeth, he said calmly, your empire built its strength through conquest. The human admiral stood confidently on the bridge of his flagship. Behind him, human officers continued monitoring every movement of the Imperial fleet. Humanity built its strength differently, Carter continued. We built alliances. We built knowledge. We built resilience. The Emperor finally responded, his deep voice carrying through the communication channel. And you believe this makes your species superior? Carter shook his head slowly. No, it makes us survivors. Those words carried a powerful meaning. Humanity had survived countless challenges throughout its history. Natural disasters, global wars, political conflicts, and technological revolutions. Every crisis had forced humans to adapt and evolve. That adaptability had now followed them into the stars. Carter continued speaking. Your empire believes strength means domination. He gestured toward the surrounding fleets. Humanity believes strength means survival. At that moment, a new update appeared on the Imperial tactical screen. Long-range scanners had detected additional human fleets arriving from nearby star systems. Reinforcements. More ships were entering the solar system every minute. The message was clear. Humanity was not just defending Earth. Humanity was prepared to defend its entire future among the stars. Emperor Karzeth slowly realized something he had never expected to face. Humanity was not a minor species trying to prove itself. Humanity was a rising civilization that had already prepared for the challenges of the galaxy. And the Emperor's greatest mistake had been insulting them before truly understanding them. The humans he had called cowards were now standing as equals against the most powerful empire in known space. And they were not stepping back. The solar system remained frozen in a silent standoff. Thousands of human warships held their positions like a giant wall across space, their shields glowing softly against the darkness. Inside that wall was Earth, calm and protected. Outside it floated the massive Imperial fleet of the Zarvok Empire, once feared by the entire galaxy. But now that fleet no longer looked unstoppable. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was facing an enemy that had not been frightened by its reputation. On the Imperial flagship, Emperor Karzeth stood alone near the large observation window. Beyond the glass, he could see the distant shapes of human ships spread across space. They were not rushing forward. They were not firing weapons. They were simply waiting with quiet confidence. Behind the Emperor, his admirals were still studying the tactical displays. Every new calculation gave the same result. A battle inside the solar system would be extremely dangerous. Even if the Empire eventually won, the losses would be enormous. Entire fleets could be destroyed. The Emperor finally turned back toward the command bridge. His voice was calm but heavy with thought. "These humans," he said slowly, "are not what we believed." None of the officers disagreed. They had all seen the same evidence. Humanity had built an advanced military without ever announcing it. They had hidden their strength behind diplomacy and patience. And when the moment arrived, they revealed power that rivaled the greatest empires of the galaxy. On the main screen, Admiral Carter still waited calmly. The human commander had not threatened the Empire. He had not demanded revenge. He had only made one thing clear: humanity would never allow itself to be controlled. The Emperor studied the human admiral carefully. Carter's face showed confidence, but not arrogance. It was the expression of someone who knew exactly how strong his people had become. Karzeth slowly returned to his throne and sat down. For a long moment he said nothing. Every alien officer on the bridge waited in silence. Finally the Emperor spoke. "Open a full communication channel." The bridge officers quickly obeyed. The signal connected directly to the human flagship. Carter appeared clearly on the screen. The Emperor's voice echoed across the solar system. "Human Commander, your species has proven its strength today." Carter did not interrupt. He simply listened. "For centuries," the Emperor continued, "the Zarvok Empire believed fear was the foundation of power." His glowing eyes shifted toward the surrounding human fleets. "But your people have shown a different kind of strength." Across the galaxy, billions of alien viewers watched the historic moment through live broadcasts. Never before had the Emperor spoken to another species with such respect. Karzeth continued speaking slowly. "You were called cowards." He paused briefly. "But cowards do not build fleets like this." The human admiral nodded slightly, but remained silent. The Emperor raised his hand and gave the order that would shock the entire galaxy. "Imperial fleet, withdraw from the solar system." The command bridge fell completely silent for a second before officers rushed to carry out the order. Across space, the enormous Imperial armada slowly began turning away from Earth. One by one, the warships activated their engines and prepared to leave the system. The human fleets did not chase them. They simply watched as the Empire retreated. Admiral Carter spoke once more before the connection closed. This was never about war. The Emperor looked back at the screen. Carter finished with calm confidence. This was about understanding humanity. The communication channel ended. Within hours, the Zarvok fleet disappeared into deep space. The solar system returned to peace, but the galaxy would never forget what had happened that day. The species that had once been mocked as weak had stood calmly against the most powerful empire in existence. Humanity had not won through anger. Humanity had not won through destruction. Humanity had won through patience, intelligence, and unity. And from that day forward, every civilization in the galaxy understood one simple truth. Never mistake human patience for weakness, because when humanity rises, even empires step back. And that day, the galaxy learned a lesson it would never forget. Never mistake human patience for weakness, because when humanity rises, the universe changes forever.